Hello and welcome to the very first edition of the live stream GSMC College Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. Apologize for being a little bit late here. Some technical difficulties on my end, but have that all figured out. Excited to get going here. Be a little bit quicker of a show just to fit into the parameters, but today we are going to cover the Pac-12 and George Kliavkoff deciding to part ways. Seemed like a decision that was coming for a while, but officially has happened. Steve Sarkisian is set to get a extension with Texas that will make him a very rich man. We will get into that. And then we got spring practice coming up, so we'll get into what teams I feel have the most to gain from spring practice, where spring practice is really the most important for these teams. And then finally, we will finish it off with what I'm calling Good Vibes Monday. I figure everyone to start their week needs something good to start their week, something to get them excited, get them happy. So we're going to have the inaugural episode of that to end the show, so make sure you stick around for that. But before we start, I want to remind everyone that we do get tons of questions and things throughout the stream. And a huge help to not only you all, but also us, is to use the link at the bottom of the screen, streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. It's a huge help to us here at the network, but also if you have a question to ask and you want me to see it as soon as possible and answer it, that is the best way to do that. So use that link if you have anything you would like to say and any questions you might have about all of the topics we're going to cover. But let's jump right in because we got to get rolling here. George Kliavkoff and the Pac-12 have decided to part ways. It totally makes sense from both sides. Ever since August and all of the realignment that has happened in that conference, it felt like he was kind of almost a lame duck commissioner for a time. I think it was well understood that he was not going to be the Pac-12 commissioner going into next year and going forward. So this does not come as a surprise to much of anyone, but it is a mix-up in the Pac-12, and with everything going on around them, two teams in Stanford and Cal going to the ACC. You have Colorado, Arizona State, and Utah going to the Pac-12, and then obviously Washington, Oregon, USC and UCLA heading to the Big Ten. It's really hard to keep your job when all the teams are are so upset with the way that things are running. They decide to find a better ship to sail on. So I think all of this started obviously when they were trying to get a media rights deal, and George Kliavkoff just couldn't really get it done for whatever reason. The only really deal that was on the table, at least that was remotely considered by the Pac-12, was an Apple TV deal that would have been mainly subscription-based, so not what you want when you're a college football conference, not what you want when you're trying to stream sports in general, whether that's a fan perspective or from the school's perspective. That's not what they want. So it makes total sense from all sides, I think. One of the big things to keep in mind is the Pac-12 is two teams. There's only Oregon State and Washington State left, so it did not take a lot for George Kliavkoff to be voted out. It only took those two people getting together and deciding they need a new leader, and I tend to agree with them. I think there's been a lot of problems since he's really taken over. He was hired in 2021, and really took less than 3 years for a lot of different things to fall apart. And this is after the Pac-12 decided to move on from Larry Scott over a dispute about a rental property they had for their headquarters that was costing them about $92 million in rent over 11 years. And while that is a crazy amount to spend on rent for a office, I will say it does feel like small grapes now that you don't have a conference, essentially, and you're really fighting tooth and nail to stay alive in this business. So not to say they necessarily regret letting Larry Scott go, but George Kliavkoff might have not been the best replacement in the world. But as for 2024, Oregon State and Washington State will be playing mostly Mountain West teams this year for the next 2 years. So it could be interesting to see them including those teams going down the road, whether that's Boise State, UNLV. There are a number of really good options that they could bring into the Pac-12 or just merge conferences and create a new one. The one wrinkle to that is most of their other sports, Olympic sports and basketball and things of that nature, will be playing in the West Coast Conference with Gonzaga and Pepperdine and those schools. So it does add something of a wrinkle to all of that, because at the end of the day, who do you add in, who do you not add in, and are you able to add in all these teams? Because although Oregon State and Washington State are much bigger brands than any of the other schools that are being, considered here in the Gonzagas and the Pepperdines of the world, they also are only two schools, right? So these other conferences, the West Coast Conference and the Mountain West, they have tons of teams, tons of people looking out for their interests. So it'll be very interesting to see how all of those dealings and things go down. But the person that seems to be leading the charge in that going forward is going to be Teresa Gould. She was the deputy commissioner for the Pac-12 under George Kliavkoff, and mainly overseeing the Olympic sports and women's basketball, but now has been elevated to oversee the entire conference. And I think the big thing here, I talked about it when I was talking about the UCLA situation when they hired Deshaun Foster, and I think all this is about for the Pac-12 right now is having stability and having someone that they know they can trust. And as long as Oregon State and Washington State can put all of their trust in Teresa Gould to put them in the best position, I think that's the most important thing. Obviously, you'd love to be in a better spot than you are today if you're the Pac-12. There's no doubt about that. But they have full trust in Teresa Gould. Obviously, they are moving her in as quickly as possible because time is of the essence. If you're the Pac-12, every single day that you sit in kind of this limbo area is not good for the conference and not good for the sport overall. So I'd love to see Teresa Gould really flourish in this role and really succeed, because I think it's good for the sport. I think having as many big market, as many, big conferences across the country as possible, keeping that, possibly keeping Oregon State alive, doing little things to just make this conference a little bit more viable than it is today, which is a little bit tough. They're currently arguing to be looked at as a full-on conference in the 6x6 playoff format, and we'll see how that works out. I think Teresa Gould is going to be a huge part of that. So it'll be interesting to watch that and see how all of that turns. But a lot still ahead for the Pac-12, a lot of work to do, a lot of things to check off the list in terms of getting back to where they need to be. But at the very least, they have new leadership, and leadership that the two schools that are currently running things over there feel very confident in. So that's the most important thing. There will obviously be much more developments as this comes into fruition and Teresa Gould starts to make moves for this conference. But as of right now, George Kliavkoff is out the door, Teresa Gould is in, and we will see how the Pac-12 fares in 2024, because every decision is going to make a really big difference. But we will take a short break here, and when we come back, we are going to be talking about Steve Sarkisian signing an extension that will make him a very rich man for years to come. But stay tuned here, and we will be right back.